It's going to have a significant impact. As a matter of fact, it already is. If you noticed what happened yesterday, the announcement from Apple, tens of billions of dollars that are going to be reinvested into our economy and tens of thousands of jobs. They actually talked about hiring 20,000 new people, and many companies, Apple included, giving money back to their employees. We heard about our friend Steve Califer, who owns not only the Somerset Patriots, but Flemington Car and Truck Country, giving $1,000 bonus back. This is real stuff happening, or a $500 bonus. But there are companies doing this all over the state and the country because Congress finally, despite polling and pundits on news outlets like CNN hammering the White House, hammering the Republicans, they did it. They actually got something done. And one of the reasons they got it done is there were a few courageous souls behind the lines that got it done. One of those is my friend Tom MacArthur, who's a member of Congress and was arguably the reason that this tax bill got passed because of his negotiating skills, his courage, and his strength. He joins me now. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good morning, Bill. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I have to say, so I have to invite you next year. We did an award ceremony last night for our Speaking Millennial podcast, and we had the first annual Millens Award. I'm thinking you could have gotten one next year. I'll keep you in mind.
You'll have to tell me what it is. But another time, though. But you mentioned Apple, Bill.
Yeah, what do you think? Huge news.
Apple is announcing investments that will create 20,000 new jobs over the next 5 years. Just yesterday, Celgene, right here in New Jersey,
great company,
announced it's opening a new research center in New Jersey that'll create 500 jobs, and the list goes on and on. AT&T gave a big employer in New Jersey. Gave $1,000 bonuses to over 200,000 people. Comcast, another big New Jersey employer, gave 100,000 employees $1,000 bonuses and announced they're investing $50 billion in infrastructure. The list goes on.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned Steve Califer, right? So even the local companies are doing this, and you're right. And I say, it is directly because, and you mentioned this on the show a few weeks before the bill passed, that one of the big issues was going to be the corporate tax cut to create a true market incentive for these companies to give back. And what's amazing is they did. So are you hearing it, though, from your detractors? People are saying, oh, come on. The people, where are those people now that said the corporations will just keep the money? Because that's not what they're doing.
The few that are stuck in the mud on this, that just can't acknowledge that this bill did any good, mostly people that want the tax code to get more and more progressive, more and more tilted, those folks know they're not giving any ground. But anybody who's really looking at this, not only does this lower individual and family rates, it's resulting in businesses all over the country investing. Major utilities. Here's another thing. We're in the middle of one of the coldest winters we've had in a while. Yeah. Major utilities all over the country are announcing they're lowering rates because of the tax cuts. Now, this is such a big deal for stimulating our economy, for helping families to invest more locally. Even the most one of the most progressive liberal organizations in New Jersey, they hate the bill. But they've acknowledged that it'll save $9 billion in tax payments from New Jersey families to the federal government. $9 billion a year.
And what's amazing about this is that you hear progressives talking about raising wages, and they go to their bag of tricks, and it's always about raising the minimum wage. Let's double the minimum wage. Let's force people to be paid more. When what happened in Congress is you turned around and said, hey, what if we just cut taxes? Let's see what happens. And it happened. It's happening.
And numerous companies have also announced an increase in minimum wage. Look, this is what this is about. It's about helping American families have more money to spend, to invest, to save. It's about having the private sector decide how money gets allocated and spent in this country, not government bureaucrats. Granted, we have a big government. We're going to have a big government, and we have to have adequate resources. But this government has become out of control in its spending.
Yeah.
And this new tax law is acknowledging trees don't grow to the sky, Bill.
Right.
And there has to be some kind of a limit on how much of Americans' money Washington takes. And that's what this is, a really critically important step in saying enough is enough. We're going to lower taxes. We're going to force the federal government to live in a budget, just like you and I do.
That's right.
And every listener does. And that's what this is about. I'm very enthusiastic about how it's shaping up. And I think,
I was just saying, I am too. I think that what is especially exciting is that it sounded to the progressive anti-tax cut crowd, which were mainly a lot of special interests and these organizations that are really professional political organizations. They attacked saying that if you give corporations an opportunity to do good things and grow the economy, they won't. What they'll do is they'll line the pockets of their high-end investors and the CEOs. And exactly the opposite happened. And I think what's most interesting about this is it proves the point that the market works. But here's the second side of it. And this is what we won't know yet, but I'd love to check in with you. And I do appreciate you come on regularly to keep people up to date on what's happening in Washington because it impacts us directly. But what I'll be interested to note over the next few months is what happens to federal government revenue. And I've made this case for years saying that when you stimulate the economy and cut taxes, government revenue actually tends to go up. And I hope that when that happens, we'll report on those numbers and maybe it'll serve as a lesson to New Jersey.
Well, and that may take some time,
yeah.
but the federal government also, and Trenton also needs to live within a budget. And we need to think about our key priorities, which right now is investing in our military. That is the one area of the federal government that desperately needs more investment. We lost last year, Bill, we lost 4 times as many of our troops to training accidents as we did to combat. 4 times as many in training accidents.
I didn't know that.
This is just a terrible, terrible situation where planes don't have the proper equipment to fly. People aren't getting the training they need. Ships are operating with old equipment. This is an area we need to invest in, and the federal government needs to stop pouring money on every other issue. That there's a few priorities we got to focus on. Our military, the opioid crisis is another.
Yep.
But we need to let the private sector work in so many of these areas.
I'm with you on that.
I'll leave you with one other thought.
Go ahead.
The Treasury Department announced last week when they released the new tax tables that 90% of Americans are going to see a tax cut. 90%.
And those are going to start with your next paycheck. It should start in that first paycheck in February.
Well, they should. I mean, that's up to how employers actually get at this. But based on the new tax tables that are released, the Treasury Department is saying 90% of the people should see a reduction in their.
And you know what's amazing? That was about the number that you had mentioned before this bill passed about how many people would be benefited. So I appreciate you, seeing this all the way through. And I want to thank you for your strength and courage on this. And it's always good to talk to you. We will certainly regroup over the course of the next couple of weeks. I think we've already got you scheduled to come back, and we'll talk about exactly what the federal government is doing with regard to the military, the opioid crisis, et cetera. Thanks for coming on this morning.
You bet.
All right,
bet, Bill.
All right, Congressman. Have a great day. That was Congressman Tom MacArthur doing good work in D.C.